Okay, I want to say, and I start traditionally by saying namaste to everyone. Welcome, welcome today. It's a pleasure to see all of you. And I have a panel of real experts who I really don't need any introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and introduce you to them. I'm going to start with Sandeep Dwivedi on my right. Sandeep is the COO of Interglobe Technologies Quotient and Travel Port. That's him. Next to him, thank you guys, thanks a lot. Next to him is, of course, Jal Shah. He's the group manager, managing director of ResLife. Jal, pleasure to have you here. And of course, at the far end is, of course, Deepak Rawat. He's the senior vice president international markets for Make My Trip. Deepak, it's a pleasure to have you here with us. Okay, guys, friends, as we go along, I just want to mention to you that I'll just set the tone, and after that, I'm going to ask questions to our esteemed panelists. They're the ones who really are dealing with the hardcore marketing, what's happening with India. They'll tell us about it. And in the end, we will take in a few questions. If anybody or any of you want to ask the panelists a few questions, it'll be a pleasure. At that time, you need to introduce yourself before you raise your question. That will be wonderful. So just to set the tone going, I really want to talk about is India's outbound tourism market has a large potential despite the pandemic. Although hit hard by COVID-19 and despite the ongoing challenges, outbound tourism in India is set to see a considerable increase through its economic growth. With a growing economy, young population, and of course the growing middle class in India, outbound could become the most lucrative outbound market in the world. That is what India is for all of you. The Indian economy is still continuing to build on its success after the initial lull in 2020. Current projections, and this is what I share with you, current projections show that the national GDP of India will increase to US dollars 4 trillion. That is 50% higher than the 2021 levels. And this, incidentally, is coming from the Global Data's microeconomic database. India poses an excellent opportunity for destination marketers who can capitalize on India's young population comprising Gen Z and the millennials who have the propensity to travel abroad. Furthermore, its improving infrastructure and developing low-cost airline market means outbound travel is both affordable and accessible. Projections are showing the full recovery. Now, this is projections which are showing full recovery by 2024, and by 2025, the outbound will cross 30 million. That's what we're looking at. Statistics, I'm going to share some statistics with all of you. According to UNW, now these are some old statistics, but they are very relevant today. According to UNWTO, outbound tourism expenditure from India totaled to $23 billion in 2019. 71%, and I'm going to repeat this, 71% of the expenditure was for personal purposes, while only 29% for business and professional purposes. So maximum Indians, when they spend the money, you know where they're spending the money on. India ranked 14th in the worldwide terms of outbound, in terms of all the world countries, on their total spend in 2018. That means that 2018, India ranked 14 as far as the world is concerned in terms of spend, compared to its 25th position in 2013. That means in the last 5 years, India rose 11 steps ahead. So that's where India is at the moment. The total visitor spend is expected to increase to US dollars 40 billion by 2026. Spending per departure, now I'm saying spending per departure by Indian is expected to rise to US dollars 900 by 2024. India, in fact, I'm going to mention that India is extremely diverse travel market with different types of travel segments, each one of them having its own aspirations, needs, and behavior patterns. The Indian leisure traveler, if I can safely say, I can classify them into 5 categories, just as a good thing to go ahead. Group tours, which is the GIT, which everybody knows. Now, FIT, you can divide it into various categories. One would be the urban, wealthy families. Second would be the millennials. Third would be small groups of 6 and 10 people. And of course, the Gen Z travelers. That's what we're looking at. Also emerging are new sub-segments of outbound, which are called solo travelers. Indians are traveling alone. Women travelers, and of course, senior travelers who are now starting to travel. Now, as I go ahead, I want to talk something about the airlines. Today, there are 6 Indian airlines and 60 foreign airlines who are connecting India with 63 different countries all across the globe. Foreign airlines are operating 1,800 weekly flights, while Indian carriers are operating 1,500 departures every week. Just to give you an idea, before the pandemic hit, a total of 4,700 international flight departures were being operated every week from Indian airports. That is what India is and has been. Where to from now? With China and Russia markets on a close, if I may say that, India is ready to take on the mantle of being the biggest source market for the world. My question is, are you all ready to look at the Indians and accept the Indians? Today, I have experienced, today we're going to listen to our experts who are going to tell us what's basically happening. And I want to mention something to you on these, for them, that these are hardcore professionals who are hands-on. Very few people you'll find there, all 3 of them I can safely say are hands-on professionals who have done some remarkable work for them. So that's what basically it is. And I'm going to start with Deepak from, Deepak, if you were the last I introduced you. So just an introduction, a 1-minute introduction, if you can talk to us and tell us, what is the Indian traveler now looking for, especially after the pandemic?
Thanks, Sanjeet. See, what pandemic has done has restricted Indians not to travel overseas. And what has happened in recent times is the domestic market has flourished. In fact, the travel to domestic has seen growths which was better than pre-pandemic. The spends were more, the travel frequency was more, and that's what is a built-up for outbound. And as destination opens up, I think there is a huge demand waiting for Indians to travel overseas. With restrictions going away by countries, the searches on various platforms, the interest shown, and Indians actually have moved on to search differently, look at differently. The patterns have changed, but eventually it's going to be a market which is going to be center of largest tourist market among the world in next at least 3 years. That's how I look at it.
3 years? Wonderful. Yeah. I'm going to move on to Sandeep. Sandeep, I'm going to come to you. What I'm taking in from what Deepak mentioned. What are the trends looking like? What are the booking trends looking to you? And where do you think so the Indians are traveling? If you can throw some light on that, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. Good morning. So, of course, the pandemic last 2 years has taken away a huge amount of travel. But if you look into from some of the statistics which is coming over here in last few months, because don't forget the Indian aviation space on an international has opened only on 27th March. Too early trends, but the reports which is coming up over here is entirely quite, I can say, from business opportunity, it's a big business opportunity. So what we are seeing, I was reading a recent report of AMEX, which is a global trend report of 2022, which has been released, that 94% of Indians want to travel and want to explore, and they want to travel more than what they have traveled earlier. So that's how we are seeing from a booking point of view. So just to give you some statistics around how, as a GDS, because we monitor number almost on a daily basis. April, if you look into from an April perspective, at a international side, we are almost 52% of pre-pandemic level. And don't forget, April is the first month, and that's not a real number to check. But if the first month itself gives you around 52% of your pre-pandemic level, and pre-pandemic I'm comparing April 19 versus April 22. Domestic is almost, we are at pre-pandemic level. So that's fascinating. And don't forget that 18-19 was the year, means when the jet has gone away. And we didn't have too much of a capacity from an air perspective in India. The way the market is opening, Akasa is coming, different airlines are coming up over here, which means the traffic on a domestic side will keep on increasing. Now, more on a, what are the destinations where people are traveling? So, from an airline perspective, like it's dependent on a capacity, how much of a capacity is being booked. But Booking.com reports or a survey suggests that Indians are more willing to travel toward London, Paris, Dubai, Amsterdam, Toronto, and Middle East, Southeast Asia. And the current booking trends, what we are seeing is more toward the Middle East and Southeast Asia. That's the main destination. And there is a reason why. Because today travelers are interested to book a short haul or a direct flights connectivities right now because of the complexity of connecting flights and all those things. So the current, very clearly we are seeing more moving towards Southeast Asia and Middle East is the main thing. And some part of Europe is another thing which is coming over here. But right now the buying is more toward direct flights and short connectivities.
So you made Middle East very happy, and everybody who has a direct flight should be looking at it. Okay, I'll come back to you on that, but moving on. Jal, you really know the Indian market and you have been dealing with them. Now, I really want to ask you, because since you're dealing with the B2B, the agents and everybody, which part of India are these booking coming from? Where are the agents coming? That's really important to understand.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. See, what made this interesting is that in India itself had an unlock in phase-wise manner. So if you follow the trend, the international booking followed the same pattern. So when you should have airports open, facility to travel, and the interstate rules which were, arrival quarantine for some, arrival for not. And that's how we saw the entire map panning out with, Maharashtra recovering the last because it has a more strict lockdown on the first side. And the second side, on the second wave, how it impacted. But we see pretty much pan-India busy. It also has seasons. So, West traditionally had a lot of honeymoon and, wedding and sort of travel. We see now we are reaching towards the summer where, entire almost India is going to have same school holidays. So you'll see leisure coming in, followed by other festivities in India, which always attracts. So, but one thing is sure that, pan-India, we see a large recovery as well as, a large opportunity, where everybody, wherever, if they are able to catch on seats, and as Sandeep Bhai mentioned, direct is a preference. So that's what is the first drive, and obviously the cities where you have more direct flights are the one doing currently well than cities who have to take like connections and, plan their travel.
So you're throwing the challenge to the airlines, so they need to go into the interiors, smaller towns if they want the numbers.
Yeah, because I think not every time we are getting connections so well done that you still have to do a domestic layovers, which makes certain small haul travel quite complicated.
Fair enough.
So that was my point.
Totally. Thanks, Jah. Now I'm going on to some of the real questions. If I'm going to start with you, Deepak. Here I want to talk about the various NTOs, the tourism boards, organizations. Keeping in mind what I mentioned about what China and Russia is happening, are the tourism boards now investing more in India? Are they looking at that? Can I safely say, do they think that India is the new giant now, if I may use that word?
In situation, how I look at it is everybody is focused on India with more than 28 million passports and 2 years of wait to travel overseas, and in current world circumstances, I think it is very obvious and clear in this ATM that every NTO wants a share of Indian market. And there is no reason why it should not. I think everybody's realized the potential. There is a buying power. There are enough flights and increasing as we speak. And people will travel, and NTOs want to go deeper. They know India has a large population. There are different segments. You rightly mentioned the group tours, to FITs, to senior citizens. We have every segment, and every NTO is working really hard to get a pie of these segments.
So it's not one segment, you're talking to everybody possible.
Everybody, youngsters. I'll give one example, right? There are people who will travel as youngsters to X destination, and there are senior citizens who want to take a long holiday. The interest of travel is increased so much, and our internal insight team survey says 75% of the people are willing to spend more than what they were doing pre-pandemic on their travel, and 52% people are willing to take a loan to travel. That is a very, very strong indication of how travel is going to be.
Will you repeat that again? 52% people are taking a loan for a holiday.
Are willing to take a loan to travel.
Amazing. That's something new which you mentioned. Okay, I'm going to come to you, Sandeep. This is something which he taking on from what Deepak mentioned about, not about the loan, but what you're seeing at the moment is because all the airlines are not flying into India at the moment, the prices are really high. It's 3 times the price, and the flights are going full. It's not that they're not. So that means Indians are paying a lot of money and good money to kind of travel. But I really want to ask you is, when do you think so the airlines will start flying in big numbers into India, and when can we expect the slide of pricing to come down, because that's going to encourage a lot more people?
So, Sanjita, as I said, means I'm quite optimistic about travel overall. But to answer your question, we need to understand the macroeconomics dynamics which is going around right now is too volatile. Means it's not one thing. Too many things are moving around that. And when you were talking, that approximately 3,200 international flights has been allowed from on 27th March onward. Slowly the capacity is coming in Indian market. And as you rightly said, 4,700 weekly flights earlier, that is pre-pandemic level. So we approximately in a number game somewhere around 25 to 30% short of pre-pandemic level. But whether airlines are willing to put a capacity, that's a main question. And as you said, the flight load is almost more than 80%, which is amazing, even with the higher fares. So which means, and plus Deepak, I'm correlating with Deepak this thing also, that 52% loan clearly states that people are willing to travel. That's the first fundamental about it. So 3,200 to start with the numbers, in my opinion, is very high, significantly higher number. And it's simply a demand and supply game. Means if there is a supply, then certainly there is a demand. And air, hotel, such kind of industry where the supply has to come first, the demand automatically comes. And it's not like other industry where the demand comes and the supply comes. It's a reverse mechanism. So demands are there, and then certainly if you look from a domestic point of view, as I said earlier, that jet is gone, but also don't forget the new jet is coming, Akasa is coming, and the existing players are revamping themselves. So which means there is a huge amount of capacity coming in Indian market. And capacity to travel, especially from tier 2, tier 3 towns is significant higher. It's not a tier 1 towns who are traveling. So those trends we can see very well. And also we should not forget the current trend when I touch on a macroeconomic, crude prices and inflation. Dollar means with the Indian currency is all-time high. And third, we should not forget about Ukraine and Russia crisis, especially the flights are taking extra time, burning extra fuel. So all these factors are playing a game. But it's a summer schedule what we are seeing, 3,200.
But Sandeep, I agree with what you're saying. That's why they're charging the higher price and people are paying, Indians are paying. But what happens to the future growth? Because the point is, they're nowhere near what used to be pre-pandemic, number of flights which used to come into India and all that. And you mentioned that you're reaching that level. When can we expect, let's say, a full thing when all the airlines are here flying into India?
I'm always very optimistic, as I said. Means I believe by next year itself, maybe a summer or a winter schedule, we are going to see either a pre-pandemic level or more than pre-pandemic level. And you may not be surprised that we may have a shortfall of only 10 to 15% by winter schedule. Because see, India is all about summer schedule because people travel a lot for a holidays and everything. So that's a main time. And once that is coming over, the airline want to put a capacity. And don't forget that the biggest challenge is a visa right now. Means a European sector, means if somebody want to go, there is no visas. Means I'm getting shocked, means some of my colleagues want to travel to US. And to get a visa appointment, he has to apply visa in Chennai instead of Delhi. The person is Delhi. So there are a lot of macroeconomic factors.
No, I understand. That's another serious problem which I think the embassies have to really look into, because sometimes they're waiting for 3, 4 months to get a visa, which is unheard of. And in fact, I'm told to get an appointment with some of them, it takes about 4 months, and then it takes it. Anyway, I understand where you're coming from, but now I want to move on to Jar. I want to really ask you, taking this clue, because you have seen this market before the pandemic, you've seen it during the pandemic, and now. Are there any real changes? I really want to understand from you, has the Indian traveler changed in any way? Does he want to look at new things? Does he want to look at something different? What is the so-called new normal now? Everybody says, after the pandemic, there's a new normal. I really want to understand, is there a new normal for the Indian travelers?
So I think I can answer this question on 2 terms. One is our industry or agents and kind of behavior there. And we saw that, there is one side to it that we saw agents who were only specialized doing certain things, certain segment of travel, and it's important that we discuss about cruise and other travel, which is still in a phase of recovering. They had a tough time and they had to change. There were certain travelers who were only preferring to travel on those, segment of travel where, you wanted to do a cruise or group travel, and that's kind of taking time. So they had to adopt, and I think that's a change what we are seeing now. That's increasing leisure FITs. On a consumer point, I mean, we don't interact with consumer, but what we see from our data is that the first phase was people really wanted to go out because you were locked in your house and you had done domestic trips. I mean, not to forget, we had a strong surge in domestic. So people had travel. It was not that, straight away, now I can go to my office and next day airport is open and I'm going to go to Maldives. But yes, people had travel and they were done with it. These are travelers who travel. All of us travel, and not because we are from travel, how much we love to travel ourselves, right, as a traveler. So that's where we saw that people started traveling to Maldives. There were segments which came in between which helped agents survive, stuff like transit business and so on. So multi-layer travel came up, and what we see now is more conventional, where it's leisure and wherever you could get visa and a direct connection and seat. We started seeing, standalone European travel from those who wanted to do probably multi-city gets restricted to only doing Switzerland because of the flight, maybe time. We started seeing now interest towards Asia because Thailand is the next big thing for India, right? And it's early stage because how it was like kind of open and the communication, and we all knew there was great confusion. Malaysia started seeing traction. Singapore is seeing some numbers, searches and stuff. So nothing much has changed. But yes, one thing I can say is that people will look for a flexibility. You want to book last moment till you are very certain. They're very careful of how they are traveling, travel rules and all. And most importantly, flexible. People want refundable. Nobody wants to risk their money just to travel like this. So
Correct.
That's a new normal for sure.
Fair enough. Deepak, now continuing with what Jal mentioned, this huge mantra which is changing, and one thing which I want to ask you is because he did mention, and if today Indians are paying such high pricing for airlines, and I'm told some of the hotels also they're charging over $1,000, $1,500 a night, and Indians are paying for it. So what is this? What is this new mantra? What is happening? How are you looking at that?
See, what people have realized now is they need more than travel. They're very, very particular about what they want in terms of safety, in terms of hygiene, in terms of quality. Hotels to villas, what we call alternate accommodation. People want to stay in apartments. There are people who also are looking at homestays. And hotels have obviously had a great time within India. And as things open up, Maldives perhaps had best of the times. We did more numbers to Maldives what we did pre-pandemic, and people were paying just crazy prices and hotels were still going full. So that's what people has realized, that they want to, pandemic has perhaps taught everybody that we need to fulfill our dreams, and travel happens to be among the top bucket lists, right? And it is repetitive. People have, as my fellow panelists have said, direct flights, non-transit, straight flights, go to best of the hotels and stay there. Safety and hygiene becomes clearly the opportunity. New experiences, what they can do on ground, adds on over and above that. As things are opening up, Sanjeev, we can see earlier obviously it was only Dubai and Maldives for outbound, which is doing growth numbers. Now as Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore, Bali, as restrictions have gone off, the surges are high, people are booking largely hotels and resorts which are better quality, has safety standards, and perhaps good category hotels. Who was spending for 3-star is now looking at a 5-star, 4-star. So that the entire overlook has changed phenomenally what earlier it was.
Okay, I do understand, and you touched on a very sensitive topic in terms of hygiene and everything. So I'm going to come to you, Sandeep, on that, because I know that's a little passionate question with you. There was the big talk about health passports. If you remember, they said, like you have a normal passport, you're going to have a health passport, will this become a reality in the long run? And what really should we be focusing on? Is this the jabs which you get, 3 of them or 4 of them or 6 of them, whatever it is that your passport you're talking about? Or how do you think in future things will change?
So Sanjit, I think necessity is a mother of invention. Okay, and with this pandemic has really taught us very well, that means how to digitize the things, means your passport is altogether different, means, so what is going to be health passport? It's going to be an app-based platform where you're digitizing all your records, whether you take your vaccination or your health record or your prescriptions and all those things. So today only I was reading an article that US has said that you will be deported if you're carrying a medicines and not carrying a prescription for that.
Correct.
So that's a trend.
Correct.
Means you need to carry all your health records and everything. Number two, we have to also understand that from a consumer or from a traveler's perspective, that you don't want to carry so many papers with you. It's a one place where you have a record, whether your vaccine certification or whether your booster dose or whatever this thing. And another thing pandemic has taught, that today COVID, there can be something else tomorrow. Means we are in a, whether we call it a VUCA word or whatever we say, things will keep on changing, things will keep on evolving. So there will be something new will keep on coming. So we need, digitization is going to be the main effect, and health passport, in my opinion, is going to be the big thing going forward. Now the biggest challenge is this health passport or whatever you say, it's a uniformity, because so many countries, so many this thing, so many app-based platforms are coming. So what is the uniformity of this thing? Who's going to accept what and how they are going to accept? So that is the biggest challenge which need to be addressed going forward. However, I think if another thing I just want to tell from an India point of view, which as an Indian I feel proud that as a India is the only country which started with the first digital vaccination certificate. We got out of a printed or handwritten certificates. So that's a step toward moving everything, linking your Aadhaar, everything toward that. So that's a progress from an India point of view. But we were talking about since challenges and all those things, from a few things which really need address or how to resolve that. One, privacy is going to be the main thing, because if you're putting a health passport, your everything is on over there. So like GDPR compliances is going to be the main thing, how you're going to look into GDPR. And then your California Consumer Protection Private Acts will be another thing which is going to play the role, how the privacy is being protected. I think once we are able to address these 2-3 things, then health passport, in my opinion, is not a very futuristic. It's in short term, you're going to see that, very short term. Because like India is very soon going to, the new passport is going to be biometric and all those things. Who stops you to link this biometric with your health records and everything? And from a consumer perspective, it's one of the most easiest thing. Means in case of a challenge when you're traveling, somebody else can look into everything on your digital so that you can be tracked.
Sandeep, sorry, if I'm just going to ask you to this, it's easier said than done. The point is, who's going to take responsibility for that? Would every country have their own biometrics thing which you need to do? Or would it be some national body which was going to say that I'm going to control this? How does it move forward? Because we keep talking about it. Sorry.
Unfortunately, I don't have an answer to that. But of course, the onus will be the countries right now. Because, see, every country means, depend on developed countries, advanced countries will be the first one to adopt to these things. But like developing countries means India is always taking a lead on that. So means especially like we are going to start a biometric passports. That's a reality now very soon. The new passport is a biometric passport which is going to come.
Fair enough, thanks. Jal, I'm going to move on to you. Keeping everything in mind from the point of view of the safety of a destination and all that, has this made a difference for the Indian traveler? How does the travel agent perceive them? How did the Indian say, I would like to only travel to this country because this is opened up and they are safe and sound? Are they looking at that? Or are they looking at just, you accept my vaccination and I go there? How is it, what's the changes?
No, I mean, see, in general, the consumers became more informed because, you know, you are going to face the trouble if you are going to get sick or not have proper document. So the consumers started coming up with a lot of information and question. Our travel agent folks and community started reading more and be prepared. And at our level, because we are more of a transactional side, we had to change our UX, build certain data, find data. So you display, you know, what are the protocols at the hotel, what are the sanitization policies at the hotel, and at the same level, information on based on 2 countries. And like they have done very good. A lot of other websites have done very good, and that also becomes a referral. So our industry in general kind of built across a good archive of information. And I must say that, there were not many misleading information, and there was good data available where people didn't have to actually hunt on tourism websites and call centers and all. Airline also played a good role. I mean, you look at Emirates today, how informative their website is, what kind of emails you get. Our Arogya Setu and the e-Suvidha or Air Suvidha also gives you a lot of information when you arrive to India, what you need to do and stuff. At Indigo level, I just saw that, they do some advanced passenger registrations, right? And that asks for certain information, so which is brilliant. I mean, at airports, we see people are checking, taking you in. So I think that information flow was smooth, but for a consumer to decide and travel, safety was a very important situation, especially in the first, I say 12 to 14 months while the pandemic peak was on and travel became, because, first to respond to this was business travel community. I mean, you had a compulsive travel, be it to your company and all, and they were just waiting for opportunity to fly kangaroo trips just to go to a destination. And they were the one who wanted to know more, and they took risk, right? Because it was more compulsive travel. Leisure on the side were like really more cautious because you're going to travel with, let's say, family, infant, children. And that's where we saw this trend and change in Maldives, and I thought I can quickly bring it, that, Maldives was more of honeymoon, celebration, some get-outs, special occasions, and we saw real family travel to Maldives, which is like, resorts who were like not very kids-friendly also accommodated somehow. The meal changes were adopted for Indian because we were a large, at that time Chinese market was on, but now you ask them and the people come, no CIS, no China, and it's India, right? And they want us to travel in summer. Unfortunately, we may not deliver those numbers which we had given, but they refer this as the summer, which was the summer of 21, where, they were one of the only option available from India, right? Cheap flights to Maldives were cheaper than Dubai at times, and people built around it, and everybody did that. So yeah, I mean, safety is very important.
That's going to be paramount. Okay, now friends, let's move on to a different, I really want to take this to a different level now. Deepak, let's start with you. There's another big segment of outbound business which we all, actually everybody is looking forward to, is MICE. That's something which actually every tourism board, every country wants big groups of MICE numbers coming in, and a lot of them have not traveled for the last 2 years. This pandemic has really put a stop on some of them, because I think the responsibility also lies with the corporate who's taking them. So one has to be very, very careful. Now, what is it like? I like you to throw some mics. What kind of questions are you getting from these corporates? Are they looking forward to it, and what precautions are they taking?
So as you rightly said, Sanjeet, the onus is on the company or the corporate who's organizing MICE. Large numbers, very important people, be it staff, dealers, business associates, very critical part of Indian travel, completely blocked for 2 years. What happened over the last few months is it started coming back. The corporate travel is back for small, medium, large size accounts. The planning of offsite started because physically people were starting to come into office, and then the conferences started, and now we are at a stage where we see MICE happening within India, right? And some has happened in pockets like Maldives and Dubai, where the safety is there and there is enough confidence. As things open up by country, we are seeing surge in queries and planning for places like Thailand. Dubai's already got multiple MICE groups. We've already operated a few. The queries to travel to large destinations like Europe, obviously there is challenges on visa processing, but as of now, most companies and corporates have confidence that they want to get back to the normal. They want to launch their schemes and targets and start doing their MICE events, because it's eventually what brings them more business. But they're very, very cautious. They want us to play a very critical role, and we have a large base of corporates which we work on, to suggest them which are the safe places in terms of doing a MICE event. They want to be very, very particular what they want to do on MICE, because earlier it used to be a lot of gala parties, large conference rooms, product launches happening outside. That they're very, very cautious, and they want to be really sure before they want to get exhibited. But India, MICE is happening, conferences is happening back to perhaps almost 60% of what it used to
But
happen.
Deepak, sorry, I want to, earlier some of the mice groups of 5,000 people who used to travel.
That's
Will that happen in future again, or they're going to be only 1,500 to, like, what's it going to be like now in the
I
future?
don't think those 5,000s will happen immediately. Firstly, there's flight capacity is not back. It will happen in small batches, perhaps smaller numbers. Yet we see at least up to 500, 600 happening. But those 3,000 and 5,000, I don't think that will happen. Not only, perhaps it's possible at some destinations, the corporates themselves want to play it safe, and that's what perhaps people like us and travel agents suggest them to break it up.
Okay. Anyway, I've been given a nod. We need to wind up very soon. But Jal, I want to come to you. There's something which is very interesting, which I want to ask you. This has been on my mind. The travel agents has been a particular community which really felt the heat in this whole pandemic. Now, the hotels have started doing good business. They're charging good amount of money and they're getting it. So is the airlines. You're paying them kind of situation. Now, my point to you is, where is the travel agent? Is he making that kind of money? How is he surviving? What is he doing? Because this is one sector I think everybody seems to have lost out on.
So I think there were two aspects, right? One, surviving the change and disruption, which a retail travel agent had been, beyond COVID. So we saw that we were always having this discussion that how a retail travel shop survived. Answer is survived before, definitely survived during COVID. Lot of cost cuts and the amount of agility our industry showed, and not because we thought that this will last this long, because all of us were like very optimistic that it may not. But we saw that cutting down certain costs, how you moved your people, certain expenses were reduced. I think that helped them to survive during this phase where virtually there was no business, right? How they are going to earn more, I think people have become more agile, literate, and kind of more communicative towards with their client, where you're changing the stream of travel. So the cruise guy is selling now leisure. People who didn't sold domestic because they thought it's complicated ended up selling domestic because that was only available. Long haul people or people who used to sell Europe and group tours never thought Maldives could be their fit because it's a different segment, ended up selling this. And we as an industry itself are very resilient to a lot of this stuff, and that's what we brought in. I mean, all our expertise and kind of how we mobilize people, we mobilize ourselves to adjust, and which is very creditable because, if you are a small city-based, small travel shop which has survived over a decade, only your customers are all your solution. From that city, you are not going to get a customer even from, let's say, a big city or a Bombay, even if you have a web or you have some interaction. So people started using social media. I saw a lot of them were sharing information only, sharing rules, that helped them to build kind of now it's open, this is what it's open, WhatsApp played a role, broadcasts played a role, and that's pretty interesting, and that's how they engage. So I think travel agent will make money as people know that it's expensive. The big ticket items have started coming in, so the long stay business will come in, high value transactions are happening. So even though margin will shrink, the sum up will be pretty healthy for travel agent, and that's what we see.
Okay, that's interesting because what you're saying is now that the travel agent who was just doing outbound, now he's doing domestic. Tomorrow I could see him do inbound. So he's actually looking at new spheres of travel and tourism to look into. You mentioned something to me in the beginning also. Tell me one thing, is this going to help the smaller travel agent all over the country to make consortiums or work together or something of that kind? Will this happen, or they will still work individually?
I mean, it can happen, but I've seen that the travel agent close to your house or somebody used to book the traditional family travel agent could play a role now because there is more trust factor, there is more customization, and they will offer more flexibility and that local knowledge which you will trust. Technology will play part, so they are going to disrupt a certain segment of travel, but all across we have not seen industry shrinking. I mean, our numbers have grown, we've grown 30, 40, 50, 3x, 4x, and so as most of the travel companies. That suggests that, as our outbound is growing, and we are a complete outbound country where, right from an adventure to a domestic to a old age, we have a all travel which is going on. Yes, there could be certain segments which are growing, which is sports and all. That will also come up because we have population and performance and literacy level. I mean, so I don't see any problem for small travel agent, whether they can work and make consortium. somebody had to take lead. We have associations tried doing it. They try to protect interest. So that could be interesting question. Certainly not for me to answer.
Okay,
but
point well taken, but you touched a very important point, and that's what I'm going to ask Sandeep. Sandeep, he mentioned a lot about the technology part of it. He said that's what's going to be. Now, do you think every agent, I know they need to work with technology because when it comes to bookings and everything, it can't be done without that. But what do you think? So are they going to be, what do you say, more dependent upon technology now? Or are they going to see some changes after this pandemic? How is it going to affect the travel agent in their business-wise?
So Sanjit, I'll go with one of the Darwin theory, which says survival of the fittest. Now, what is fittest? The person who's ready to adapt to the changes around him. That is the fittest person. Now, a very interesting survey done by Booking.com. See, as I said, everything is driven by your demand and supply kind of this thing. So, travel agent also seeing, like I was talking about Booking.com. So, 74% respondent to the query has said that the technology has taken away their anxiety to travel. So which means pre and post travel. So that technology has taken away this thing. Now coming back to from a travel agent perspective, the pandemic has really changed the perspective. Okay, people have start realizing that adopting a technology will automate their whole processes. Okay, which means they need not to be too much dependent on others. And second, if they are able to automate the process, they will be able to concentrate on their main business. That is a development of fixer consumption, means acquiring a customer. That's going to be this thing. Number two, with the pandemic, they realized that the staff can work. If the technology is there, if they have automated the process, can work from anywhere. They don't need an office. So for travel agent, what is a major cost? If you look into the major cost, means the raw material itself is a manpower, and second is a real estate. So if you can reduce by adoption of a technology your manpower cost and your physical office location cost. So these two things you can address through a technology. So technology is certainly the adoption we have seen the increase. And number two, I'll just tell you, especially like online used to be, earlier people used to think online is more going toward a B2C kind of environment. But now people have realized that online is a kind of a necessity, whether you talk about corporate travel, whether you talk retail investor or anyone, they need that. Instead of physical centers or physical manpower in the office, it's more of a technology which is going to be there. So we are seeing a change in trends. Even from our perspective, from our business perspective, we have seen the uptake on a licenses, which is online licenses, has significantly gone up. Even a person from a tier 2, 3 towns are adopting to the technology. Of course, the challenge is the cost, because when you adopt a technology, then there is certainly a cost which comes through. So those are the challenges people are realizing, and they're working toward that. But yes, we have seen a huge uptake on a technology side now.
So now what you're suggesting is work from home for travel agents, and that's what they really need to do. Anyway, I know I'm out of time, but I want to ask Jal, when we're standing outside, you did mention to you, they are looking at new avenues for travel agents to make money. You mentioned MacArthur Glen and all that in the beginning. What is it, what you're looking for? Because one is they make money out of the airlines and hotels and all that. Is that the only way? Or can the travel agent look at new businesses to look into?
So I think, the starve and a hunger phase which travel agent had, and seeing 2 years go really bad, they started selling everything, as I said. And I think that's the way people spend time, getting themselves more literated, adding technology, increasing their reach via technology. And these are the avenues where travel agents have to be smart. So you up your segments, sell more things, which is classical upsell, try and look at things which you can sell, which you are not selling. So we've seen people say, I don't sell URL, what's there for me to make money? But I think every small buck sent that ended up to a tally, and we've seen that our per transaction value and the people buying ancillary services has increased. So we as a company are also thinking what more we can put, and thinking that, because people have expectation from us. So Sanjit, I think that's how it's going to be, where, products like MacArthur, which is going to give them referral commissions, right? Which was never considered as a part of travel. If we talk about that and said, why I'm going to send somebody to outlet without, transfer, I mean, it used to be either a day excursion, so I had to book from a tour company. Here it's just referral, and they shop and I make, and it's win-win for both parties because my customers are convinced. That's why I've sold them, that city or a holiday. I can upsell, recommending him something. The amount of COVID test travel agents sold. I mean, I am not a healthcare company, but on a healthcare made on a joking side, we couldn't list it anywhere, so we listed in sightseeing section where we were selling COVID tests in sightseeing, and people are buying it. Imagine, and it was not small. There was money, there was convenience on offer, and there was that facility we were giving it to agent, and we had to adopt those pretty quickly in certain cities where possible. So yeah.
So the key mantra for the travel agents is now to sell everything possible and make sure that the customer on his holiday is very happy.
Jugaad.
Friends, I know we're really out of time. I know Nick has been looking at me for a long time now. Before I ask everybody to give their closing remarks, any questions? Anybody who would like to ask a question? There's a mic right here. You can come up and introduce yourself and ask a question.
As a tourist board, when you're working with the Indian market, you're really looking to try and source the right kind of data to inform decisions from the Indian market. What would you say, and I could address that to any of you actually, what would you say is the best source of data we could be using as tourist boards, not just Visit Britain, to inform us on the potential and the trends, etc., from India?
A great question. I'll give you some brief on that. Any of you want to answer this?
I think
Sandeep,
we were just discussing that GDS data is really the mirror on trend. So the question shifts left.
So, of course, I can easily understand because so many data are floating around, and like GDS data is one of the data which can capture only airside or GDS participant. But don't forget, India, especially somewhere around 50 to 60% outbound is also LCC kind of data. But so to be honest, the real data sits with the DGCA, that is a controlling authority where the airport data are flying over there. So that's, in a nutshell, is the real number. But don't forget, there are a lot of surveys being done over there. So surveys are the most relevant information around it, like whether you look into McKinsey reports, whether you look into some of the reports where the data are easily available. And plus, some of the information you can also get from trade bodies also, where they do capture these informations.
I'll just add to it, Trisha, while DGCA data will tell you on the travel data, I think you'll work with partners like us very closely on what kind of searches are happening in terms of city-wise search, in terms of the duration. Is it 7 days in advance or 30 days in advance? So we actually cut through we have a data science team which just works madly on the data, and that's something which is very, very critical for us.
And it's real time, of course, which is vital,
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
That's something that gives me time to wrap up. So I'm going to start. Sandeep, you're sitting in the last end. Your closing remarks. Let's see what you'd like to say to everybody about.
Okay, so the pandemic has done one thing. The perspective has changed from necessity, comfort, and luxury. The travel is not now is a luxury, it's become a necessity for the traveler. Now, if you look into some of the reports where people want to travel again and again, so that's really one of the things. Travel is kind of resilient. And from an India perspective, because I'm quite a big advocate of India, so the consumer behavior is entirely changing in India. For an example, there was a recently McKinsey report says that consumer in India want to spend first on a restaurant, second on apparel and accessories, third on a travel. And so that's become a significant important. And don't forget, India is all about the demographic mix, that is middle class and the baby boomers. Now 50% of Indian populations is below 25 and 65% population sits below 35. So that's a high middle class and high earning class who want to explore the world.
Thank you, Sandeep. That's great. Jal, over to you. What would your closing remarks be? What would you tell everybody?
So I think, see, we are part of a wonderful Indian outbound community, which has always adopted changes to the destination. So, as the world looked at and as new destination introduced, you just had to get flights, some interest and a good NTO, and we know that Indian numbers fall. I mean, you worked and we've seen the evolution of Philippines as a destination in India, not common over the years and stuff. So I think India as a market will overcome every challenge. There's a beautiful opportunity. Our aviation sector is booming. Our LCCs are going to fly international. We have a lot of nearby countries in travel, and we have a population to deliver the numbers. Let's leave the wealth aside. I mean, it's a growing economy, as everybody know. So there is this opportunity where people who only looked at certain markets, be it China, CIS, here we are raising our hand up, saying they're a large country and not a new travel, easy to get passport, believe me, than some of the countries, you know, which used to produce larger numbers. Easy to get visa also for some of the countries now with CIS and all, you know, what we see. So I think we have this number to deliver and we are welcoming. I mean, it's a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you very much. Deepak, I'm not giving you the last word, I'll take the last word, but let's see you speak. Your closing remarks, please.
I think the timing is right as things open up. I think what is going to be crucial for all of us in travel industry here is identify what segments you want to target in India. It is a large country and people have different ambitions when they travel. Work closely with your partners, ensure you target the right partner or consumer with the right content. There is a large market which is ready to travel, and as things open up and with more direct flights and visas easing up, and a lot of countries are now moving to visas, I see travel only becoming easier and content making it even more motivating for the consumer to choose and select the destination where they want to travel. So I think that's the future, and that's how it's going to increase.
Thank you, Deepak. Before I thank all my staff, I'd like to take 1 minute and I want to mention a few things. What I learned from them is, please keep in mind that India is a huge country. It's a little complicated. You need to understand that very well. Just because we speak English doesn't mean that the business is done in a very simple way. It's complicated to a certain extent. Be careful about that. Indians are ready to travel, and we're talking about 30 million Indians who are going to travel. And the figures which you saw from UNWTO said 79% of the money they spent was for personal. So you can well imagine where they're going and what they want to do. If you want them, it's a huge pie, get them. But please make it easier and simpler for them to travel. As simple as that. If they can get the visa, if they can get the airline ticket and the hotel, they will be at your doorstep even before you realize it. That's what I would like to say on this. And with this, I really would like to thank all of you and my panelists today. Can you guys give an applaud for yourself? I think you guys were wonderful. Right questions, right things. Thank you so very much.